Classic red and blue suit. The suit that would become the most recognizable costume in superhero comics debuted in Amazing Fantasy No. 15, published in 1962, created by writer Stan Lee and artist Steve Ditko. It is the look that launched Spider-Man, and every other suit in this video is a variation on or reaction to this original design. The contrast between how iconic the suit became and how modest its actual specifications are tells you something worth understanding. The design solved a practical problem before it ever became a cultural symbol. Comic books in 1962 were printed on cheap newsprint using a limited 4-color process, and a character in dark colors risked disappearing into the gray page. Red and blue separated the limbs visually against that background, gave the character an immediate readable silhouette, and made action sequences legible in the cheapest reproduction technology available. The mask eliminated any facial expression, no chin, no mouth, no trackable eyes, which forced every emotional beat into body language and physical pose alone. Webline detailing across the red sections. Blue legs. The suit features a spider emblem on the chest as its defining visual element. The suit's red and blue color scheme ensured visual legibility, which helped it remain recognizable across decades of comics. No other superhero costume from the same era maintained anywhere near this level of continuity with its original design. Characters get reboots, cinematic reimaginings, and full costume overhauls across decades, but this suit stayed intact. The fact that Steve Ditko created it in 1962 does not fully explain that endurance. Plenty of characters debuted that year with functional costumes that nobody wears anymore. The suit's enduring popularity stems from its strong association with the character across generations of stories. The suit's iconic status grew alongside Spider-Man's popularity over decades of publication. Ditko's choices were shaped by the constraints of 1960s newsstand printing, making a character readable in motion, visually distinct from other costumed heroes, and coherent when reproduced cheaply week after week. The iconography accumulated over time. It was never the starting premise. What makes the suit genuinely striking when you examine it is how little it actually does. No armor plating, no integrated technology, no built-in communication systems or environmental shielding or enhanced sensory equipment. It is fabric stretched over a body, with web shooters the only equipment the wearer supplies from outside. Every other suit discussed in this video adds something: armor, intelligence, weapons, camouflage, adaptive camouflage, and each addition answers a specific threat or capability gap. This suit answered a problem that existed before any of those threats had even been imagined, and it answered it by requiring nothing of the technology and everything of the person inside it. The suit works because it is deliberately minimal, and that minimalism is why it established the template. Every other design in this video had to either improve upon or deliberately reject. Subscribe and tell us in the comments which Spider-Man suit type you think was the most enduring. Let's get back into it. Symbiote costume. But that stability would not last. Spider-Man acquired the alien symbiote on Battleworld, where a damaged costume led him to the wrong machine, and released it from a containment field where it had been held by a Kree soldier and Deadpool. The symbiote dissolved the tattered remains of the old suit and bonded directly to Spider-Man, forming a new black costume in its place. It first appeared when Spider-Man brought it back to Earth in Secret Wars #8 in 1984, then debuted as the black suit in the Amazing Spider-Man number 252 in May of that same year. Jim Shooter and Mike Zeck created the suit for Secret Wars #8, with Roger Stern and David Michelinier later developing the ongoing black suit storyline. What distinguished this suit from every other costume in Spider-Man's roster was that it did something no fabric and no machine had ever done. It produced organic webbing without any equipment, and it responded directly to Spider-Man's thoughts. The capabilities were real and immediately transformative. No mechanical web shooters needed, no reloading, no jammed cartridges, no running out at the worst moment. The suit simply responded to intent, generating the exact amount, shape, and consistency of webbing Spider-Man needed before he consciously decided to produce it. That responsiveness made the suit feel alive in a way that clothing and machinery never could. But the symbiote also did something the original suit never did, and that Spider-Man never asked for. At night, while he slept, the symbiote took control of his body and left to fight crime on its own. Silent, more aggressive than he was, operating without his knowledge or consent, and leaving him exhausted and disoriented when he woke in the morning. The suit was not merely a garment, it was a second intelligence sharing the same nervous system, and it had its own agenda for how that body should be used. The symbiote is a parasitic entity that feeds on aggression and amplifies negative impulses, bonding to hosts as a living costume. The black costume was designed to be Spider-Man without Spider-Man required to operate it. That is why it had to be aggressive, that is why it had to act independently, and that is why it had to be destroyed before it could permanently replace the person wearing it. The symbiote's independent behavior demonstrated it was a separate entity with its own agenda, not merely a garment. Future Foundation suit. That alien symbiote was bad enough, but at least it sort of explained itself. Peter Parker would go on to wear a white and black suit given to him by Reed Richards upon joining the Future Foundation as part of Johnny Storm's last will and testament, and Marvel Comics considers it one of his canonical costumes. In the animated series Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Parker settles on a white and blue Spider-Man suit that is visually identified as his Future Foundation suit, a designation that carries actual weight in the primary continuity because Future Foundation appears as one of Spider-Man's listed team affiliations. So this isn't some random palette swap for the animation department, it's a costume with a comics pedigree that the show leans into directly, Spider-Armor MK2, and if the Future Foundation suit raised questions about why Peter would abandon the colors that defined him for a decade, the Spider-Armor MK2 makes that choice look almost reasonable, because at least there was a catastrophic reason for this one. Spider-Man lost his spider sense fighting Alistair Smythe, and without that sixth sense that had kept him alive through over 100 missions across his career, he needed something more than willpower to compensate. He spent months training in martial arts with Shang-Chi specifically to rebuild his threat detection through pure skill, and the armor was the other half of that equation. A suit constructed after the loss debuted in Amazing Spider-Man 656 in 2008, written by Dan Slott with art by Marcos Martin, built from a lighter material than its predecessor, so that the speed and agility Shang-Chi's training relied on wouldn't be strangled by the very armor meant to protect the body doing the work. The armor specifications read like a checklist of what the first version got wrong. Lighter composite throughout. Articulated plating that doesn't lock up. Independent gauntlet and boot systems. Extra web fluid cartridges built into the forearms because a man who can't feel danger coming needs more than one shot. Enhanced eye lenses with targeting overlays. Kevlar weave undersuit. Heavy by street clothes, almost nothing compared to the first armor's bulky bulk, and the result was a suit that actually let Spider-Man move like Spider-Man while still being bulletproof enough to survive the kind of direct hits that had suddenly become lethal without the spider sense warning him 3 seconds early. Here's the thing about losing the spider sense, though. It wasn't just a mechanical problem, it was a psychological one. For years, Peter had operated on reflexes honed by a power he couldn't explain, couldn't see, couldn't second guess. Removing it didn't just change how he fought. It changed how he thought about every fight. Shang-Chi's training addressed the technique, and the MK2 addressed the durability, but neither could replicate the instinct. What they could do was buy time. Give him enough margin of error, that skill and equipment together might approximate what the spider sense used to hand him for free. Nobody investigated whether that approximation was actually enough until Smythe's final machine forced the question, and by then, the armor was already on the table as the answer. Spider-Armor MK3. Debuting in Amazing Spider-Man number 682, and most associated with the Ends of the Earth storyline, the MK3 suit announced itself with a very different ambition than its predecessor. Where the MK2 was cobbled together from repurposed industrial materials and duct tape ingenuity, the MK3 referenced specific named composites, hard neoprene, tactical body armor, ballistic grade paneling, the kind of materials you'd find on actual modern military loadouts rather than a superhero's improvisation. The idea was unmistakable. This wasn't a guy in thick pajamas anymore. This was armored plating, deliberate and purpose-built, designed to take on threats no ordinary suit could survive. Different artists rendered the paneling inconsistently across issues, sometimes with a few broad plates, sometimes with a denser grid, but the suit's core promise never wavered. Whatever the art looked like on any given page, the suit was built to withstand some of the most powerful hits Spider-Man had ever faced. But that inconsistency in the rendering actually reveals more than it hides. The MK3 suit's designers at Horizon Labs weren't thinking about visual clarity for comic artists. They were engineering purpose-built resilience against some of the deadliest threats on the planet, And the fact that those specifications kept getting simplified down tells you something about how difficult it is to draw a suit that complex panel by panel, week by week. The suit held up under the punishing conditions of the Ends of the Earth arc, a storyline that pushed Spider-Man to his absolute physical limits against a world-threatening scheme. And the materials listed in its design specifications are the reason why. Nobody had to invent a fictional alloy. Nobody had to invoke exotic science. The suit worked because it was built from things that stop bullets in the real world. And no, that doesn't make it just another armored suit. The MK3's material list is the precise detail that separates it from every other Spider-Man armor that came before it, because previous suits either didn't name their materials at all or named materials that existed only in the Marvel Universe's version of material science. The suit wasn't just protective in theory, it was built to counter the specific abilities of each Sinister Six member, from Electro's electricity to the Rhino's raw strength. The MK2 had armor in concept, the MK3 had armor in composition. That distinction is why the paneling inconsistency across artists ultimately doesn't matter. The suit was armored whether or not the art rendered every plate, because the definition came from materials, not from how it looked on the page. Spider Armor MK4. The MK3 built Spider-Man a suit out of real armor materials and then sent him through a storyline that tested those materials to their absolute limit. The MK4 answered that test by deciding the test was irrelevant. This suit, developed by Peter Parker at Parker Industries, appearing in Marvel's Spider-Man for PS4, and listed among the 28 suits available in that game, operates on a completely different premise from anything the MK3 attempted. Where the MK3 was built from ballistic composites and tactical-grade neoprene, real-world materials with real-world protective properties, the MK4 was developed using resources available to Peter Parker as CEO of Parker Industries. The resulting battlesuit represents a significant technological leap beyond the MK3's ballistic composites, trading physical armor layers for an energy shield system that the game translates into gameplay as near total damage protection. The MK3 could stop bullets. The MK4 doesn't need to stop bullets because the bullets never connect with anything solid enough to stop them. The suit absorbs the impact before it registers as contact. It's not armor in the conventional sense, it's a field of absolute non-negotiable defense maintained by nanotechnology distributed across the suit's entire structure. The visual language reinforces just how far this suit has departed from anything resembling the MK3's grounded design. A distinct glowing spider insignia sits at the chest, casting light rather than sitting flat as an emblem. The web pattern across the suit isn't printed or woven. It's teal, luminous, and reflective, designed to show under specialized LED lighting, which means the suit was constructed with the understanding that it would be viewed in conditions where ordinary pigments would disappear. The red and blue color scheme stays true to Spider-Man's palette, but the execution is unrecognizable compared to the MK3's muted, tactical tones. This is costume design that assumes the wearer will be seen in low light, under artificial lighting, from angles that would render conventional suit graphics invisible. The MK3 was designed for the conditions of its story. The MK4 was designed to look like what it is, even when the lighting works against it. Unlocking it in-game requires reaching level 35, along with 4 base tokens and 4 challenge tokens. A meaningful investment that reflects what the suit actually does. Its suit power, Defense Shield, generates a force field that absorbs all damage when active, allowing Spider-Man to endure attacks that would otherwise overwhelm him. The MK3 told a story about armor made from real materials tested under real pressure. The MK4 tells a story about what happens when you stop needing armor at all. Advanced Suit. You just saw one of 28 unlockable suits in Marvel's Spider-Man for PS4. A number that includes everything from futuristic armor to literal clown costumes. The one you actually play most of that game wearing is this one. It first appeared in Marvel's Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 in 2018, and unlike the collectible armors scattered across the map, this suit was built into the story from day one. Its design runs on a form-follows-function philosophy, where each material layer represents a deliberate trade-off between flexibility and protection. Distinctive white panels separate its visual design from every other Spider-Man suit in the game. According to the developers, each material in the suit was chosen deliberately as part of a form-follows-function approach. The original version of this suit, Advanced Suit 1.0, was designed by Otto Octavius before the events of the game. Peter Parker inherits it at the start of the 2018 game and wears it through the entire campaign. By Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Peter has upgraded to Advanced Suit 2.0, a refined version of the original design. Two versions, same core identity, one clean design through line across both games. This is the suit the community almost universally calls the Insomniac suit, named after the studio that developed the games. That nickname stuck so thoroughly that most fans don't know what else to call it. The problem is that Insomniac suit isn't a Marvel Comics designation, it's a fan label born from convenience, and it blurs the line between the game's original creation and the comics canon this video tracks. The advanced suit belongs to this video's scope because it originated in a Marvel-licensed game with a clear, traceable design lineage, but calling it by the studio's name rather than its actual title introduces confusion about where it sits in the broader Spider-Man continuity. That confusion raises the question nobody's quite settled yet. The advanced suit has white carbon fiber integrated directly into its structure, built on a philosophy of form following function. So why does a civilian superhero suit, created by a scientist worn by a teenager, need reinforced carbon fiber panels at all? The design language reflects the form follows function philosophy the developers applied to every material in the suit. Iron Spider suit. The Spider Armor MK4 you just saw was one version of a suit built around the idea of Peter needing more armor. The Iron Spider is a completely different thing wearing the same name. It's not Peter's design at all, it's Tony Stark's, and it arrives carrying political baggage the moment it touches his shoulders. Iron Man created the Iron Spider armor specifically and gave it to Peter in preparation for Civil War, a 2006 crossover that would divide the entire superhero community down the middle. The armor first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 529, and Stark created it specifically for the political moment, giving it to Peter in the days leading up to Civil War as a show of commitment. The opening salvo was quiet. Stark offered the suit as an upgrade, an olive branch, a show of faith. What it actually was, nobody said out loud at the time. It was armor built for a specific political moment, the Superhuman Registration Act. The law that would require every enhanced person to register their identity with the government or face arrest. Stark was preparing his coalition before the bill even passed, and Peter's acceptance of the suit was, whether he understood it or not, an acceptance of Stark's authority over his choices. The red and gold pattern embeds the armor directly into Iron Man's visual language. Peter doesn't just get a new suit, he gets Stark's colors, Stark's tech, and Stark's expectations stitched into the fabric. A person wearing the Iron Spider isn't just a guy in better armor. He's a guy who accepted a gift from someone who didn't trust him to make his own decisions, wrapped in technology that monitors, amplifies, and can theoretically be overridden by the person who built it. When Peter ultimately rejects the Registration Act and goes on the run, the first thing he has to do is get out of that suit. It's not just costume design, it's the physical representation of a relationship that has curdled. That relationship tells you everything about how the suit system in these stories actually works. Armor in Marvel Comics isn't just about protection or power, it's a map of who holds authority over whom. The Iron Spider's existence proves that suit design in this continuity operates as a political document, not just a tactical one. Every panel, every material choice, every color on that armor encodes the power dynamic between the man who built it and the man forced to wear it. The deeper mechanism at work is that suits don't just equip heroes, they bind them. Web pattern suit. This is the suit that made Spider-Man Spider-Man across every version of the story simultaneously, and it was built entirely by hand in a Queens basement with no budget, no backup tech, and no plan beyond getting through the afternoon. While every other suit on this list was designed around what Spider-Man could become, stronger, faster, better armored, loaded with Stark systems, this one was designed around what he already was, and that distinction is exactly why it still matters. It's the original template, the one that established the visual language every subsequent suit on this list either honors or deliberately breaks from. The suit is the classic red and blue design with the black web pattern printed across the chest, arms, and mask. No arc reactor interface, no comm system, no auto-weaving, no alien biotechnology, just fabric, paint, and whatever Peter could find. He spent the afternoon in his bedroom sewing the web-spangled pattern into a spandex costume, and that detail, the printed web, became the single most consistent visual element across Spider-Man's entire publishing history. Most suits that came after, no matter how advanced or alien or military grade, carried forward some version of the web pattern. Remove it and you no longer have Spider-Man. You have a hero in red and blue who happens to climb walls. That pattern is the visual anchor, the reason every adaptation in comics, animation, and film converges on the same silhouette regardless of how wildly the underlying technology diverges. Here's where it gets interesting. Fans regularly rank suits by combat effectiveness, material science, and defensive capability. And by every one of those metrics, this suit loses to nearly everything else on this list. That framing entirely misses why it belongs here at all. The reason this suit still earns its place on the roster, decade after decade, isn't what it can do. It's what it represents. This is the suit that proved Spider-Man could function without inherited wealth, stolen alien technology, or military contracts. The web pattern that appears on every other suit on this list started here, applied by hand, in a basement, with no resources beyond ingenuity. Stealth suit. Light warping suit. This is not a suit designed to make Spider-Man stronger, faster, or more durable in a fight. It was created by Spider-Man to combat the sonic screams of the Hobgoblin. Peter built it specifically to counter Hobgoblin's sonic scream attacks, developing the light warping materials at Horizon Labs to negate those threats completely. The suit bends light and sound around the wearer, making him functionally undetectable, impervious to sonic attacks that would otherwise overwhelm any other suit on this list. The first public appearance came during Sony's panel at CCXP in Brazil in December 2018, and fans immediately theorized that Symbiote must have provided it, given how sophisticated the technology appeared to be. That theory didn't hold. The suit was loaned to Peter Parker directly by Nick Fury. It shows up in Spider-Man Far From Home as the all-black design, built using materials from Horizon Labs for Peter's European deployment, the entire point being that he could operate abroad without constantly announcing his identity to every camera and bystander in range. The light and sound warping made him invisible to surveillance and rendered him immune to sonic weaponry, which is exactly what you want when you're trying to stay off the radar in a foreign country. Kane, the scarred and volatile clone, stole the suit during his run as the Scarlet Spider and used it for his own operations. That theft is the detail that reveals what this suit actually represents. When the requirement is total operational invisibility, the solution isn't another gadget, another Stark upgrade, or another iteration on the basic suit. It's something you step into and wear. Kane recognized that immediately, and for a period of time, the Scarlet Spider identity ran on Peter's stealth design, not his own. The suit proved its premise beyond Peter's own use of it. Antiox suit. Where the stealth suit before it was rare and singular, the Antiox suit is deliberately engineered to be reachable. A piece of armored plating from a notorious adversary's arsenal, repurposed as something any player can equip through ordinary progression in a video game. The Antiox suit is exclusive to Marvel's Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 and falls outside the video's canon scope of comics and MCU films, trading accumulated resources for the right to wear the kind of hardware that should, by all rights, be locked behind a boss fight. The contradiction is immediate. Armor built to counter a specific threat is handed out like a participation trophy. The suit's defining feature is its suit power, called resupply, which continuously refills gadget ammunition during gameplay. That single mechanic recontextualizes everything about how a player approaches combat. Suddenly, gadgets stop being a limited resource you ration and start being a stream you manage. The suit returned in Spider-Man 2 on PlayStation 5 as part of the game's suit roster. No token cost, no level gate, just a story beat, and it's yours. Nobody investigated why the developers originally placed it behind a paywall of earned tokens only to flip to free distribution in the sequel. Character motivation for that decision didn't matter to the people who built the game. What matters is what the suit does. Resupply, continuous gadget refill, a mechanical advantage so straightforward and reliable that it reshapes how you play without asking you to learn anything new. Defenders of the original unlock structure will say a 40 token cost at level 17 is reasonable, that nothing in the game is truly paywalled, that resupply is one suit power among many, and none of this is worth examining. They're right technically, and that's precisely the problem. The armor is designed around a real fictional threat. You can see that intent in its name, its visual heaviness, its placement in the game's armor tier. And the boring explanation is that game armor is just another cosmetic and progression layer, no different from any other unlock. But resupply isn't cosmetic, it's a mechanical commitment that changes how you engage with every fight, every stealth sequence, every situation where gadgets matter. The suit earns its placement in the tier list not through aesthetics, but through consistent, measurable output. And that's the human strangeness of it. A piece of hardware built to defeat a specific adversary becomes so routine that the developers eventually decided it should cost nothing because the threat it was designed for doesn't exist in the game's world anymore. The armor survives the war it was forged in, and nobody can figure out what to do with it, so they just give it away. Spider-Verse suit. If the Antiox suit bent the rules of what armor could be, the Spider-Verse suit reveals that the rule was never real to begin with, a suit that crossed from an animated film directly into a video game because someone decided continuity boundaries were negotiable. It was pulled from Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse and incorporated into Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales, where the suit was incorporated directly into Marvel's Spider-Man, Miles Morales as a wearable outfit. The specialists will argue that cross-medium suits operate in a category exempt from continuity logic, that a suit imported from film to game answers to different rules than suits invented for games or comics, that asking why the visual effects carry over is asking the wrong question entirely. But the suit mod refutes this directly. The design translated the film's visual language into the game's interactive format. The designers didn't just import a texture and call it done, they rebuilt the suit's interaction layer so that wearing it changed how the game spoke to you, not just how Miles looked while he moved. The engineering involved in adapting the suit reflects the care taken to honor its origins. The effort invested in the MOD proves the designers understood exactly what they were doing, making the boundary between film and interactive media not just permeable, but meaningfully so. The Spider-Verse suit demonstrates that categories between media can be crossed. The supposed division between film suits, comic suits, and game suits holds only until someone with the authority to cross it decides to do so, and the Spider-Verse suit is the clearest example of that crossing actually happening. It shows that categories between media can be permeable when designers invest in the crossing. Homemade suit. Where the Spider-Verse suit reshaped the relationship between two separate media, the homemade suit reshaped everything within one. The rawest version of the Spider-Man wardrobe, assembled from a sweatshirt, pants, goggles, and whatever else was lying around a high school student's bedroom, placed deliberately beside billion-dollar armored suits to show what the role looks like before anyone is paying you to wear it. In the MCU, it's described as pieced together from odds and ends more readily available than anything else in the wardrobe. A design that reflects exactly what a teenage high school student can source, which is to say almost nothing and somehow enough. The first version was rough, visibly pieced together, lacking any of the polish that later suits would acquire through corporate sponsorship or magical tailoring, and it was created for use before Peter had faced large-scale threats. A later variation reimagined the concept with a red and blue sports jersey, exercise pants, knee pads, fingerless gloves, a mask, sneakers, web fluid cylinders, and sharp goggles modified with high-pressure cylinders to hold web fluid, and the distinctive goggles, a more considered version of the same idea, more equipment, more thought, but the same principle underneath. The homemade suit remains the version most clearly tied to Peter Parker himself before he became an acknowledged hero. The real difference between the first homemade suit and every version that came after isn't the technology or the tailoring or the funding. It's that the first one was built by someone who hadn't yet decided what kind of person wearing a Spider-Man suit was supposed to be, and that uncertainty is the one quality no amount of engineering can manufacture.